The judge asked if there was anything else to submit, and the room went still in that particular way courtrooms do. Like everyone is holding the same breath. My lawyer had already closed her folder. I was halfway to standing up when I felt movement beside me. My son unzipped his backpack. The sound was sharp in the quiet. Metal teeth, quick and practiced. He reached in and pulled out his tablet, the one with the cracked corner and the faded blue case. He didn't look at me. He placed it flat on the wooden table between us, lined it up with the edge like he was setting a notebook down at school, and tapped the screen. The bailiff shifted his weight. The judge's pen paused above her legal pad. I opened my mouth to stop him, or maybe to ask what he was doing, but no sound came out. My hand hovered over the table, close enough to feel the warmth from the tablet's glass. "Your Honor," my ex-husband's attorney said quickly, "we weren't informed of, quote." The judge raised one finger without looking up. Her eyes were on the device now. "Who does this belong to?" "My son," I said. My voice sounded wrong to my own ears. Thin, like it had traveled a long way to get out. The screen lit up. A waveform stretched across it, uneven peaks and valleys. There was a play button in the center. My son pressed it. At first, there was only static. The faint sound of a room, maybe a fan, maybe a TV in the background. Then a man's voice filled the courtroom. Low, controlled, familiar in a way that made my shoulders lock in place. "If you tell your mom," the voice said, "you're going to make this a lot worse for yourself." I didn't turn my head, but I felt my ex-husband beside me go rigid. His knee stopped bouncing. His hands, which had been folded neatly on the table, separated. One of them slid back, gripping the edge of his chair. The judge leaned forward. Her pen tapped once against the pad. Tap. She didn't interrupt the audio right away. She let it run long enough for the tone to settle into the room, long enough for everyone to understand exactly what they were hearing. "That recording?" she said finally, holding up her hand. The sound cut off mid-breath. "Where did this come from?" My son swallowed. I saw it from the corner of my eye. His Adam's apple bobbed, fast. He sat straight in his chair, feet not touching the floor, hands folded in his lap like he'd been taught. "I recorded it," he said. The gallery behind us shifted. Fabric rustled. Someone cleared their throat. The bailiff took a step closer to the table. "You recorded your father?" the judge asked. "Yes, ma'am." My lawyer turned to me. Her eyebrows lifted just enough to ask a question she didn't want answered out loud. I shook my head, small and quick. I hadn't known. I hadn't heard that audio before this morning. I hadn't seen the file. The judge looked at me then. "Were you aware of this recording?" "No," I said, my fingers curled against my palm. "I wasn't." Across the table, my ex-husband finally looked at our son. His face had gone pale in patches, red creeping up his neck. When he spoke, his voice was tight, stretched thinner than usual. "This is inappropriate," he said. "He's a child. He doesn't understand." The judge's pen tapped again. Tap, tap. "I didn't ask you yet." Silence followed. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't heavy. It was just there, pressing down on all of us equally. I stared at the tablet. The screen had gone dark again, reflecting the overhead lights in long white streaks. I could see my own face in it, distorted. My mouth was still open a little. I thought about the mornings we'd spent rushing out the door, him swinging that same backpack onto his shoulders. The nights I'd plugged that tablet into the charger in the kitchen, the little green light glowing while I washed dishes. I thought about how many times I'd asked him if everything was okay at his dad's house, how many times he'd said yes and gone back to his room. The judge cleared her throat. "I'm going to need to know when this was recorded." My son didn't answer right away. He glanced at the tablet, then at the judge, then at the floor. His sneaker scraped softly against the leg of the chair. "During a call," he said. "At night." My ex-husband's attorney leaned in toward him, whispering urgently. I caught fragments. "Consent." The judge listened, nodded once, and then looked back at my son. "How did you know to record it?" He hesitated. Just a beat too long to be accidental. His fingers tightened together in his lap. "I wanted to remember," he said. That was when my chest started to ache. Not sharply, not all at once. It was a slow pressure, like something settling where it didn't belong. The judge exhaled through her nose and sat back. Her chair creaked. She picked up the tablet carefully, like it was evidence already, and turned it so the screen faced her. "This court will take a brief recess," she said. I need counsel to address the origin and legality of this recording. She stood. The bailiff announced the recess. Chairs scraped back. The gallery began to move, low murmurs filling the space that had just held his father's voice. My son reached for the tablet out of habit, then stopped when he saw it wasn't there anymore. His hand stayed suspended for a second before dropping back to his lap. I leaned closer to him, close enough that my sleeve brushed his arm. I didn't ask him anything. I didn't say his name. I just stayed there. Across the aisle, my ex-husband was already on his phone, his back turned, shoulders hunched. He didn't look at us. As we stood to leave the table, my son shouldered his backpack again. The zipper was still open. Inside, the tablet's charging cable dangled loose, unplugged. We didn't speak during the recess, not because I didn't want to, but because there was nowhere safe to put words yet. The hallway outside the courtroom smelled like old coffee and disinfectant. The bench against the wall was cold through my coat when we sat down. My son swung his feet, slow and steady, back and forth. The backpack rested between his shoes, zipper still open. He kept one hand on the strap like it might slide away if he let go. My lawyer stepped a few feet away to take a call. I could hear her voice drop into that careful tone she used when she didn't want anyone else to hear. Across the hall, my ex-husband stood with his attorney near a water fountain, their heads bent together. He kept rubbing his jaw, the way he did when he was trying not to say something. The judge's pen tapping echoed in my head. Even out here, I finally leaned closer to my son. Not too close, just enough that he could hear me without anyone else listening. "How long?" I asked. He didn't look at me. His eyes stayed on the scuffed floor tiles. One of them had a crack shaped like a lightning bolt running through it. "A while," he said. That was all. I nodded like that made sense. Like a while was a measurement I could work with. My fingers twisted together in my lap, knuckles whitening and then releasing. The courtroom doors opened again with a dull thud. The bailiff called us back in. Everyone stood. Everyone sat. The ritual reset itself, but the air was different now. Thinner, charged. The judge returned to her seat and glanced at her notes. She didn't waste time. "Counsel," she said, "we're going to address the recording." My ex-husband's attorney stood first. He adjusted his tie, cleared his throat, and launched into an argument about consent laws, about minors, about reliability. He spoke smoothly, confidently, like he'd rehearsed it on the drive over. I watched my son instead. He was very still now. Too still. His hands were flat on his thighs. He wasn't swinging his feet anymore. When my lawyer stood, she didn't raise her voice. She didn't pace. She placed her hand on the table, fingers spread, grounding herself. "The court asked about origin," she said. "The origin is simple. The recording exists because the child felt the need to protect himself." My ex-husband shifted. His chair creaked loudly in the quiet. The judge looked down at the tablet again. She hadn't returned it to anyone. It sat to her right, face down now, like something that might start speaking again if left unattended. "Who instructed you to record this?" she asked, looking directly at my son. "No one," he said. "Did your mother suggest it?" He shook his head. "Did anyone at school? A counselor? A friend's parent?" "No, ma'am." The judge's pen paused. She leaned back slightly. "Then how did you know how to do it?" My son hesitated. Just for a second. Then he reached into his backpack and pulled out the tablet case. Empty now. He held it up, turned it over, and pointed to a small icon printed on the inside flap. "A microphone symbol. It's just there," he said. "You press it." End quote. Something tight eased in my chest, replaced immediately by something heavier. The judge nodded slowly. "And when did you start doing this?" My ex-husband's attorney objected. The judge overruled him with a single look. My son glanced at me this time. Not for permission, just to check that I was still there. I gave him the smallest nod I could manage. "Last year," he said. The room reacted before anyone spoke. A sharp intake of breath from the gallery, the scratch of a pen, my ex-husband's hand dropping hard onto the table. "That's not true," he said, too fast. "That's ridiculous." The judge's gaze snapped to him. "You'll wait your turn." My lawyer didn't smile. She didn't look satisfied. She simply opened a thin folder and slid it across the table. "There are timestamps," she said. "Metadata. We can provide those if the court wishes." The judge held up her hand. "We'll get there." She turned back to my son. "How many recordings are there?" He swallowed. "More than one." "How many?" I don't know, he said. I didn't count. That was when my ex-husband laughed. Not loud, not long, just a short, sharp sound that didn't belong anywhere in the room. This is absurd, he said. He's exaggerating. Kids exaggerate. The judge didn't look at him. She looked at the bailiff. Please take the device into evidence, she said. The bailiff stepped forward and gently took the tablet from the table. My son's eyes followed it until it disappeared behind the railing. The judge turned back to us. We are not going to play any additional audio today, she said. I will not do that without a full review, but I will say this. She paused, long enough for the room to settle. The court takes allegations of intimidation seriously, especially when they involve a child. My ex-husband opened his mouth, then closed it. His jaw worked side to side. The judge made a note. Her pen scratched loudly. Final. Decisive. We will schedule a continuation, she said. Counsel will submit all relevant materials, including the recordings, metadata, and any related communications. She looked directly at my ex-husband. Do you understand? Yes, he said. The word came out flat. As we stood again, my son reached for his backpack out of habit. He found the empty space where the tablet should have been and froze. I watched him register it, the slight tightening around his eyes, the way his shoulders pulled in. It's okay, I whispered. It's just for now. He nodded, but he didn't relax. Across the aisle, my ex-husband finally looked at us. Really looked. His expression wasn't anger this time. It was something closer to calculation. As we walked out of the courtroom, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't take it out. I already knew who it would be. Behind us, the courtroom doors closed with a soft, final click. The mornings after court felt louder than usual, even when nothing changed. The coffee maker clicked on at the same time. The toaster popped the same way. The clock on the microwave still blinked 1 minute fast because I never fixed it. But my son moved differently. He woke up earlier, not by much. 10 minutes, maybe. Enough to sit on the edge of his bed with the tablet charger in his hands, even though the tablet wasn't there. I watched him from the hallway once, not meaning to. He stopped when he realized, set the cord down carefully on his desk, and zipped his backpack closed without looking inside. At school drop-off, he didn't linger. He stepped out of the car, adjusted the strap on his shoulder, and shut the door himself. No wave. Just a quick nod through the glass before turning toward the building. I sat there for a second longer than usual, hands on the steering wheel, engine idling. The radio murmured about traffic on the freeway. I didn't hear any of it. That afternoon, I met with my lawyer again. Same office, same narrow table, the same stack of files pushed slightly to the left so she could rest her elbow. They'll push hard on admissibility, she said, sliding a legal pad toward me. Not just the recording itself, the fact that it came from a child. I nodded. My eyes kept drifting to my phone on the table, screen dark, silent. We need to understand what else exists, she continued. How many recordings? When? Under what circumstances? End of quote. I didn't know there were any, I said. I know, she said gently. But now we need to. When I picked my son up that day, the first thing I noticed was the sound. A notification chime. Soft, quick, familiar. It came from his backpack as he climbed into the car. He froze halfway into the seat, one knee still outside, one hand on the door. That's not, I started. It's nothing, he said too fast. He shoved the backpack under his feet and pulled the door shut. The rest of the drive passed in silence. The road noise filled the space where questions wanted to sit. At home, he went straight to his room. I heard drawers opening, closing, the scrape of a chair being pulled out, then pushed back in. After a while, everything went quiet. That night, after he went to bed, I walked past his room again. The door was cracked just enough to let light spill into the hallway. A faint glow pulsed against the wall. Charging light. I stopped. The cord I'd seen that morning was plugged in now. The green light steady. Something was connected to it. I knocked once. Softly. He opened the door a few inches. The tablet wasn't in his hands. It lay face down on his bed, case open. I thought they took it, I said. They took one, he said. My throat tightened. There's more? He nodded. How many? He shrugged. Same answer as before. I didn't count. I sat on the edge of his bed, not close enough to touch him. Close enough that the mattress dipped. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. He picked at the edge of the case with his fingernail. The plastic clicked quietly. Because then it would be yours, he said. And if it was yours, he'd find a way to take it. I didn't respond right away. I watched the charging light blink once, then go solid again. When did you start? I asked. He hesitated. Longer this time. After he told me not to write things down anymore, he said. The words landed without drama. No emphasis. Just a statement. I stood up before my legs could decide otherwise. Okay, I said. Okay. I didn't ask what else was on it. I didn't ask him to play anything for me. I unplugged the charger and handed it back to him instead. Hide it better, I said. He looked up at me then. Really looked. I do. The next custody exchange happened 2 days later. Same grocery store parking lot, same time, same routine. My ex-husband arrived late. Again. He smiled when he saw me, wide and easy, like we were neighbors running into each other by chance. He leaned down to hug our son, hand lingering on the back of his neck, just a second too long. Ready? He asked. My son nodded. He climbed into the passenger seat without speaking. He didn't look back. As they pulled away, my phone buzzed. This time, I took it out. A message from my ex-husband. We need to talk. That night, long after my son was asleep, another notification chimed. This time, it was my phone. An email from my lawyer. Subject line, Custody App Logs Review Needed. I opened it. Attached was a calendar view, pickups, drop-offs, notes, missed times, delays, patterns I hadn't wanted to see laid out in neat blocks of color. My phone vibrated again before I could finish scrolling. A new message. Unknown number. Tell him to stop recording me. I stared at the screen. The glow lit up the dark kitchen, reflected faintly in the window over the sink. In the other room, my son shifted in his sleep. The house settled around us. I didn't reply. The meeting with my lawyer was scheduled for 9, but I arrived 10 minutes early anyway. The waiting room was empty except for a humming printer behind the front desk. I sat with my coat folded on my lap, hands resting on top of it like they were keeping it from sliding away. When she called me back, she didn't ask how I was doing. She closed the door and went straight to the table. They're going to argue intent, she said, opening her laptop. Not just whether the recordings are legal, why your son made them. I nodded. The chair creaked as I leaned back, then forward again. I couldn't find a position that felt settled. She pulled up a screen and turned it toward me. A calendar view filled the display. Blocks of color. Notes in small text. Custody app logs, she said. You mentioned patterns. I leaned closer. Late pickups marked in yellow. Missed exchanges in red. Short notes attached to each one. Traffic. Work ran late. Forgot. This affidavit, she continued, tapping another tab, says something different. She slid a printed document across the table. My ex-husband's sworn statement. Clean margins. Confident language. A sentence jumped out immediately. I have always exercised my parenting time consistently and responsibly. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. My lawyer watched my face, then nodded. That's what I thought. I haven't really for them and dated. At home, the afternoon stretched thin. My son came back from school, dropped his backpack by the door, and went straight to the kitchen. He poured himself a glass of water, drank half of it, then poured the rest out without comment. Did anything happen today? I asked. No, he said. He picked up his backpack again and carried it down the hall. The zipper made that same familiar sound. Closed. Final. That evening, I heard him moving things around in his room. Not loudly. Drawers opening and closing, a chair scraping softly against the floor. I stood in the hallway longer than I meant to, listening. When I finally knocked, he opened the door only partway. His face was calm, but his eyes were alert. What are you doing? I asked. Cleaning, he said. Behind him, his desk looked different, clearer. Fewer things left out. The tablet wasn't visible. I nodded. Dinner in 10. At the table, he ate quietly. He pushed peas around his plate with his fork, lined them up, then ate them in a row. He didn't look at his phone. He didn't look at me. Halfway through the meal, my phone buzzed. A call. My ex-husband. I let it ring once. Twice. Then I stood up and stepped into the kitchen, setting the phone face down on the counter. It buzzed again. then stopped. When I came back, my son's fork was paused halfway to his mouth. "It's fine," I said. "Eat, Gentra." Later that night, after dishes were done and lights were off, I heard him moving again. This time, it was the sound of paper. I opened his door without knocking. He jumped. On his bed were printouts, calendar pages, screenshots, the same custody logs my lawyer had shown me, printed and stacked neatly. He was sliding them into a thin folder, smoothing each page before adding the next. "What's that?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. He closed the folder and pressed his hand flat on top of it. "Backup," he said. "For what?" "In case," he said. I sat down across from him, on the chair by his desk. The room smelled faintly like paper and plastic. The charging cord lay coiled in the corner, unplugged. "You don't have to do this alone," I said. He looked at the folder. Not at me. "I know." There was a pause, long enough for the house to settle, for the heater to click on and off. "He asked me if I was scared," my son said suddenly. "When?" "On the phone. A few weeks ago." He ran his thumb along the edge of the folder. I said no. He laughed. My stomach tightened. "He said if I was really scared," my son continued. "I would have told you already." I didn't respond. I couldn't. I watched his hands instead. How steady they were. The next custody exchange came sooner than I wanted. Same parking lot, same faded lines on the asphalt. My ex-husband was on time this time. Early, even. He stood outside his car when we arrived, arms crossed. When my son got out, he crouched down in front of him, blocking the door. "You recording me right now?" he asked, smiling. My son shook his head. "You sure?" My ex-husband's eyes flicked to the backpack, because that wouldn't look good for anyone. I stepped forward. "He's not recording anything." My ex-husband straightened and looked at me. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "You need to control him," he said quietly. "This is going to blow back on you." My son slid into the car without another word. The door closed. The lock clicked. As they pulled away, I noticed my son's backpack on the seat beside him. The zipper was fully closed. That night, my email pinged again. Another message from my lawyer. Subject line, "Affidavit review urgent." I opened it. Attached was a highlighted section, a paragraph circled in red. A direct denial. "I have never threatened or intimidated my child." My phone buzzed immediately after. Same unknown number as before. Last warning. I set the phone down and turned it face down on the table. In the quiet kitchen, the folder my son had printed sat on the counter where he'd left it, waiting. The calendar reminder sat at the top of my phone like it had nowhere else to go. Hearing 8:30 a.m. I stared at it while the kettle boiled, steam ticking against the cabinet above the stove. My son sat at the table with his backpack on the floor beside his chair, both zippers pulled tight. He wasn't eating. He was watching the kettle, waiting for the sound that meant it was done. "Toast?" I asked. He shook his head. The kettle clicked off. I poured the water anyway, set the mug down, and let it cool untouched. The morning felt narrow, like there wasn't room to move without bumping into something sharp. On the drive to school, my phone buzzed twice. I didn't check it. The red light at the intersection held longer than usual. A delivery truck idled beside us, engine rattling. My son tapped his knee once, then stopped. "After today," he said suddenly. "Will it be different?" I kept my eyes on the road. "I don't know," I said. "But we're closer." He nodded. That seemed to be enough. At the office, my lawyer didn't sit down right away. She stood by the printer as it spat out page after page, the sound filling the room. When she finally gathered the stack, she clipped it together and slid it across the table. "That affidavit," she said. "It's strong language, very clean, very absolute." I flipped through it. The same sentences I'd read before stared back at me. Never threatened, never intimidated, always acted in the child's best interest. "We don't need to prove everything," she continued. "We need to show one clear contradiction." She tapped the stack. "This helps, but we need timing. This is new that described it." She turned her laptop toward me again. A new window. File properties. Dates. Times. Metadata, she said. "If it lines up the way I think it does, it narrows his options." I nodded, even though my stomach tightened at the word options. I didn't like thinking about what he might choose if cornered. That afternoon, my son came home quieter than usual. He set his backpack by the door and went to the kitchen, then stopped. The thin folder sat on the counter where I'd left it. The edges were slightly bent now, like it had been moved and put back. "You didn't hide it," he said. "I didn't think I needed to," I said. He considered that, then picked it up and slid it into his backpack. He didn't say where. Dinner passed with the TV on low, a local news anchor talking about weather patterns and traffic accidents. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was my ex-husband's name. I didn't answer. It buzzed again. Then a third time. Then stopped. A minute later, a text came through. "We can still fix this." I set the phone down. The screen stayed lit for a moment longer, then went dark. My son watched me from across the table. "Is he mad?" "I don't know," I said. That was true. Later that night, I heard him in his room again. Not moving things, just sitting. The chair didn't scrape. The drawers didn't open. There was only the faint hum of the house settling around us. I knocked and stepped in. He was at his desk, tablet in front of him, screen dark. His hands rested on either side of it, not touching. "I'm not going to play anything else," he said before I could ask. "I didn't ask you to," I said. "I know," he said. "I just wanted you to know." I nodded. I leaned against the doorframe, feeling the wood press into my shoulder. "Your lawyer," he said. "Does she know about the messages?" "What messages?" He picked up the tablet and turned it slightly, just enough for me to see the screen light up. A thread, my ex-husband's name at the top. "Don't tell your mom. This is between us. You're making things worse." The timestamps lined up with the nights he'd said he was tired, the nights he'd gone to bed without brushing his teeth, the nights I'd assumed were just nights. "I didn't answer," my son said. "I just saved them. I didn't step closer. I didn't reach for the tablet. I let it stay where it was." "Yes," I said. "She needs to see that." He nodded and turned the screen off again. The room went dim. The next morning, the hearing reminder chimed again. Louder this time, insistent. We arrived early. The courthouse parking lot was already half full. Inside, the air felt colder than before. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. In the hallway, my ex-husband stood alone this time. No attorney at his side. He watched us approach, his expression unreadable. He stepped toward my son, then stopped when he saw my face. "This is getting out of hand," he said quietly. "You don't know what you're doing." My son didn't respond. He adjusted his backpack strap instead. My ex-husband's gaze flicked to it, then back to me. "You think this helps him?" he asked. I didn't answer. The courtroom doors opened. The bailiff called us in. As we took our seats, my lawyer leaned close to me. "We're close," she said. "But once this moves forward, there's no pulling it back." I looked at my son. He sat straight, hands folded, eyes on the judge's bench. "I know," I said. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Everyone sat. She glanced at the file, then at the tablet placed carefully on the clerk's desk this time, sealed in an evidence bag. The plastic caught the light, reflecting it back in sharp lines. "We're going to continue," she said, "and today we're going to be precise." My ex-husband shifted in his seat. The judge picked up her pen. Tap. The tablet stayed plugged in every night after that. Not on his desk, not by his bed. He charged it in the hallway bathroom, tucked behind the folded towels under the sink. The green light glowed faintly against the tile if you knew where to look. I pretended I didn't notice. He pretended it wasn't there. Our routines tightened. He stopped leaving his backpack by the door. He carried it from room to room, set it beside his chair when he did homework, rested his foot against it while he ate. When he showered, it sat just outside the door. Zipper closed. Always closed. The house felt like it was holding something in, breathing shallow. My lawyer asked for copies of everything, not the audio yet, not to play, just to confirm existence. Dates, times, patterns. We sat at her table again, the same narrow space, but this time there were no printed affidavits, just a laptop and a legal pad filled with neat, deliberate handwriting. "The texts matter," she said, "not because of what they say, because of when they were sent." She turned the screen toward me. A timeline appeared. Messages stacked against calendar entries, custody exchanges, late pickups, overnight stays. "This one," she said, pointing. "Sent at 11:42 p.m. during his parenting time. Never." I swallowed. "If he claims he was never intimidating," she continued, "then this puts him in a corner. especially paired with the recording. What if he says he was joking? I asked. She didn't answer right away. She closed the laptop slowly. Then we let him say that, she said. At home, my son sat at the table sorting his school papers into piles. Homework, permission slips, old drawings he refused to throw away. He worked quietly, methodical, stacking each pile square before moving on. What happens if the judge doesn't listen? He asked suddenly. I set a plate down harder than I meant to. The clink echoed in the kitchen. She will, I said. Then I corrected myself. She has to. He nodded, but his eyes didn't leave the papers. That night, the tablet didn't charge. I noticed because the bathroom light was off, and the faint green glow was gone. I stood in the hallway longer than necessary, staring at the cabinet door. Later, I heard his door open. Soft footsteps. The floor creaked once near the stairs, then again. I checked the bathroom. Empty. When I knocked on his door, he answered immediately. Too immediately. Yes, he said. What are you doing up? I asked. Couldn't sleep. I glanced past him. His bed was still made. The tablet wasn't visible. Everything okay? I asked. He nodded. I just moved it. It's no vatting. Where? He hesitated. Just a beat. Somewhere better. I didn't push. I stepped back and let him close the door. The next morning, my lawyer called earlier than usual. They filed a supplemental response, she said without preamble. He's doubling down. My stomach tightened. On what? Denial, she said. Complete denial. Says the recording is manipulated. Claims the texts were taken out of context. I closed my eyes. The refrigerator hummed behind me. Steady. Unbothered. There's one more thing, she added. He's asking the court to restrict the child's access to electronic devices. My grip tightened on the phone. On what grounds? Parental alienation, she said, and privacy violations. I didn't respond. We anticipated this, she continued, but it means timing matters now. We need to be careful when we submit the metadata. After the call, I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the empty chair across from me. My son's backpack wasn't there. He'd already left for school, earlier than usual. When he came home, he went straight to his room. No snack, no greeting, just the sound of his door closing. An hour later, I heard him again. This time, the chair scraped, drawers opened, something slid across the desk. I knocked. Not now, he said. I waited, then knocked again. The door opened slowly. He stood there with the tablet in his hands. No case, no cover, just the device itself, edges worn smooth. I organized everything, he said. I didn't take it from him. I didn't look at the screen. I labeled them by date, he continued, and I locked it. He turned it toward me briefly. A password prompt filled the screen. Dots instead of numbers. I didn't tell anyone the code, he said. Not even you. Something in my chest loosened and tightened at the same time. That's okay, I said. He nodded. He didn't smile. That evening, my phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. You're letting him ruin his own life. I showed the message to my lawyer later that night. She stared at it for a long moment, then took a screenshot and saved it to a folder. This helps, she said. I didn't like the word helps. I nodded anyway. The night before the continuation hearing, the tablet charged again. Not in the bathroom. Not in his room. In my bedroom. I noticed it when I went to turn off the lamp. The charging light glowed faintly from inside my nightstand drawer. He'd left it open just enough for the cord to slip through. I lay awake listening to the house, to the distant sound of a car passing, to my own breathing. In the next room, my son slept. Between us, tucked into the drawer, the tablet stayed quiet, waiting. The courtroom was fuller this time. Not crowded, exactly, but occupied in a way that made every sound carry. A couple waiting on a landlord dispute sat behind us. A woman with a manila envelope balanced on her knees whispered to her attorney. The clerk shuffled papers at her desk, the sound dry and repetitive. My son sat beside me, feet still not touching the floor. His backpack rested upright between his shoes. The zipper tabs were aligned, metal against metal. The judge entered without ceremony. She glanced at the gallery, then at the counsel tables, then at the evidence bag on the clerk's desk. Let's continue, she said. My ex-husband's attorney stood immediately. He spoke with confidence, his voice smooth as he laid out objections. Manipulation, coaching, improper influence. He gestured once toward my son without naming him. I watched the judge instead. Her pen rested against her pad, unmoving. When my lawyer stood, she didn't raise her voice. She didn't pace. She stepped closer to the bench and placed her hands flat on the wood. "The court asked for clarity," she said. "We're here to provide it. Where yous now?" She nodded once toward the clerk. The bailiff retrieved the tablet from its evidence bag and set it on the clerk's desk. The plastic crinkled loudly as it opened. My son's shoulders pulled in slightly. He didn't move otherwise. "We are not playing audio yet," the judge said, "but we are acknowledging its existence." She turned her attention to my son. "You understand that anything submitted here is serious?" "Yes, ma'am," he said. "Do you understand that this room is full of people you don't know?" "Yes." "Do you still want the court to hear what you recorded?" He didn't answer right away. He glanced at the tablet, then at the judge. "Yes," he said. The words settled into the room. No echo. No emphasis. My ex-husband shifted in his seat. His knee started bouncing again, fast and uncontrolled. The judge nodded and made a note. Her pen tapped once. Tap. My lawyer spoke again. "We are submitting an email from the child's school counselor." She handed the document to the clerk, who passed it forward. The judge read silently, her eyes moving steadily across the page. Across the aisle, I heard a breath hitch. Someone in the gallery leaned forward. The judge looked up. "This indicates the child reported anxiety following visitation." "Yes," my lawyer said, "documented before any litigation strategy was in place." My ex-husband's attorney objected. The judge overruled him without comment. She placed the email on top of the file and looked at my ex-husband directly. "You've denied intimidation under oath." "Yes," he said, "because it didn't happen." The judge didn't respond to that. She turned back to my son. "When you recorded these calls," she asked, "what were you trying to do?" He sat straighter. His hands tightened together in his lap. "I wanted proof," he said. "Of what?" "That it was real," he said. The room went quiet again, not the tense quiet from before. Something flatter, heavier. The judge nodded once, slowly. She looked at the bailiff. "Mark the recording as provisionally admissible," she said, "pending review of metadata." The clerk typed rapidly. Keys clacked in quick bursts. My ex-husband leaned forward. "Your Honor," she held up her hand, "you'll have a chance to respond after recess." Recess was called again. Chairs scraped back. The gallery stirred. A low murmur filled the space. As we stood, my son reached instinctively for his backpack, then stopped. His hand hovered there, uncertain. The bailiff gathered the tablet again. The evidence bag rustled. The sound seemed louder this time. In the hallway, my ex-husband approached us before his attorney could stop him. "This is out of control," he said, voice low and sharp. "You're letting him testify against his own father." My lawyer stepped between us. "You need to step back. Everyone bees to its—" My son didn't look at him. He stared at the wall, at a framed notice about courtroom conduct. His jaw was set. "You think this ends well?" my ex-husband pressed. "You think a judge is going to thank him for this?" My son lifted his head then. He didn't raise his voice. "She asked," he said. I answered. My ex-husband froze. Just for a second. His mouth opened, then closed again. The bailiff cleared his throat. "Sir." My ex-husband stepped back, hands raised slightly, palms out. As we sat down on the hallway bench, my lawyer leaned in. "That went exactly how it needed to," she whispered. I didn't respond. I was watching my son's hands. He had unclipped one strap of his backpack and was refastening it, slowly, carefully. Inside the courtroom, the judge's pen tapped again. Once. Twice. Through the closed doors, I could hear it. Tap. Recess stretched longer than it needed to. We sat on the same bench as before, but this time no one spoke at all. My son leaned back against the wall, backpack on his lap, arms wrapped loosely around it. His foot bounced once, then stopped when he noticed. Across the hallway, my ex-husband paced. 3 steps one way. Turn. 3 steps back. His attorney murmured something I couldn't hear. He shook his head, ran a hand through his hair, and checked his phone again. The courtroom doors opened. The bailiff called us back in. Inside, the room felt smaller, closer. The gallery had thinned, but the people who remained were paying attention now. The judge took her seat and didn't look down at her notes right away. "Before we proceed," she said, "I want clarity." She looked directly at my ex-husband. You've challenged the authenticity of the recordings. Yes, he said quickly. We believe they may have been altered. The judge nodded once. And yet you've also requested that the child be restricted from electronic devices. End quote. Yes, he said again, less confident this time, because this situation is unhealthy. She picked up her pen. It tapped once against the pad. Which is it? She asked. A fabricated manipulation or a real concern about what might still exist? Silence. My ex-husband's attorney stood. Your Honor, we're simply asking for caution. The judge didn't look at him. She turned her attention to the clerk. Has the metadata been reviewed? Yes, the clerk said, holding up a file. Preliminary review confirms multiple recordings, time-stamped during the respondent's parenting time. My ex-husband's shoulders dropped. Not dramatically, just enough to notice. The judge looked at my son. I need to ask you something directly. He nodded. When you made these recordings, she said, did anyone ever ask you to stop? He hesitated. The room leaned into it. Yes, he said. Who? My dad. My ex-husband's head snapped up. What did he say? The judge asked. He said, my son began, then stopped. He swallowed. His fingers tightened around the strap of his backpack. The judge waited. She didn't rush him. He said it would be bad for me, my son finished. If anyone found out. The bailiff shifted near the door. The sound of his shoes echoed faintly. My ex-husband stood abruptly. This is coaching, he said. He's repeating things he's been told to say. The judge raised her hand. Sit down. He didn't. Not right away. Sit down, she repeated, sharper this time. He sat. The judge turned back to my son. Did your father ever know when you were recording? No, he said. That's why I could. The judge made a note. Her pen scratched hard this time. My lawyer stood. Your Honor, at this time we'd like to submit the text messages. She handed her phone to the clerk, who connected it to the court system. The screen at the front of the room flickered to life. A message thread appeared. My ex-husband's name at the top. Dates. Times. The judge leaned forward. Read the highlighted message, she said to the clerk. The clerk cleared her throat. Don't tell your mom. This is between us. A ripple moved through the room. Not noise, just movement. A shift in posture, someone crossing their arms. My ex-husband shook his head. Out of context, he said. You don't know what we were talking about. The judge looked at him. Then help me understand the context. He opened his mouth. Closed it. Tried again. I was trying to protect him, he said. The judge nodded slowly. From what? He didn't answer. She sat back. Her chair creaked softly. I'm calling a brief recess, she said. And when we return, we will address consequences. The word landed heavier than the others had. As we stood, the bailiff approached my son. I need the backpack, he said gently. My son looked at me. Just once. I nodded. He unzipped it carefully, hands steady. The zipper sounded loud in the quiet room. He reached inside and pulled out the tablet. No case, just the device. The bailiff took it and placed it into a new evidence bag, sealed it, labeled it. The judge watched the entire process without speaking. As we filed out, my ex-husband didn't follow. He stayed seated, staring straight ahead, hands flat on the table. In the hallway, my lawyer leaned close. The judge is done giving him space. It's not. I watched my son adjust the now lighter backpack on his shoulders. He rolled them once, like testing the weight. Behind us, the courtroom door closed. This time, the sound didn't echo. The days between hearings felt suspended, like we were waiting for something to finish loading. The tablet was gone now. Taken fully. Logged. Sealed. The hallway bathroom cabinet stayed empty. The charger cord sat coiled in a drawer. Unused. The green light never came back on. My son noticed first. He stood in the doorway of my room one night, looking at the nightstand where the cord had slipped through the drawer before. He didn't ask where it was. He just nodded once and went back to his room. My lawyer called the next morning. Metadata review is complete, she said. It's clean. She didn't sound excited. She sounded focused. It shows consistency, she continued. Dates, times, duration. No edits. No gaps that suggest tampering. Well, I sat at the kitchen table, one hand wrapped around a mug I wasn't drinking from. What does that change? It narrows his story, she said. He can't say it didn't happen. He can't say it was altered. All he can do now is explain it. And if he can't? She paused. I could hear papers shifting on her end. Then the court will explain it for him. That afternoon, I picked my son up from school early for a dentist appointment. He didn't argue. He didn't ask why. He just followed me to the car and buckled in. Halfway there, he spoke. Did they listen to all of it? Yes, I said. All of it? He asked again. Yes. He nodded. He looked out the window the rest of the drive, watching storefronts slide past. His reflection moved faintly in the glass. At the dentist's office, he sat in the chair with his hands folded on his stomach, eyes fixed on the light overhead. The hygienist chatted about weather and sports teams. He answered politely, calmly. When she asked if everything was okay at home, he said, Yes. I didn't interrupt. That night, my lawyer sent an email marked confidential. Attached were transcripts, clean, typed pages, no emotion, just words and timestamps. I read them alone at the table after my son went to bed. I didn't play anything. I didn't need to. I could hear the pauses just fine without sound. At the bottom of one page, a line was highlighted. If you tell her, you're going to regret it. I closed the laptop slowly. The next morning, another message arrived. This one wasn't from my lawyer. It was from my ex-husband's attorney. We are prepared to discuss a resolution. I stared at the screen longer than I meant to. What does that mean? My son asked from the doorway. I hadn't heard him come in. It means they want to talk, I said. Before court? Yes. He thought about that. Is that good? I don't know, I said. He stepped closer and leaned against the counter. If they talk, does it stop? I looked at his hands. He was rubbing his thumb along the seam of his backpack strap. Over and over. No, I said. It just changes how it happens. The meeting was scheduled for the next afternoon. Neutral office, glass walls, a conference table too big for the number of people sitting at it. My ex-husband arrived late. Again. He didn't look at me when he sat down. He placed his phone on the table, face down, and folded his hands on top of it. His attorney spoke first. Given recent developments, we believe it's in everyone's interest to limit further exposure. My lawyer didn't respond right away. She flipped open a folder and slid a single document across the table. Metadata summary, dates, times. This is already exposed, she said. We're here to talk about terms. My ex-husband finally looked up. His eyes flicked to the document, then to me. You didn't have to take it this far, he said. My son wasn't there. He was at school. That mattered. You had years, I said. He shook his head. You're letting a judge decide things she doesn't understand. My lawyer leaned forward. The judge understands patterns. Silence followed. Not the kind that waits for someone to speak. The kind that closes a door. By the end of the meeting, nothing was signed. No agreements reached. Just a date set to return to court. As we stood to leave, my ex-husband spoke again. You think he'll thank you for this someday? I didn't answer. When I picked my son up that evening, he climbed into the car and immediately asked, Did he say anything about me? Yes, I said. What? He asked if you'd be grateful. My son snorted. Just once, that's not the word. At home, I found the thin folder again. The one my son had printed weeks ago. He'd taken it out of his backpack and placed it on the shelf above his desk. Not hidden. Not locked away. Just there. My lawyer emailed later that night. Next hearing, testimony and ruling. I stared at the words until they blurred. From down the hall, I heard my son close his door. Not hard, not softly. Just closed. The courtroom felt different the morning of testimony. Quieter. Not empty, but settled. Like everyone who needed to be there had already decided to stay. The same judge. Same clerk. Same bailiff. Even the same couple from the landlord dispute sat behind us again, the woman still holding her manila envelope like it mattered to keep it closed. The tablet sat on the clerk's desk, sealed and labeled. Evidence tag folded neatly over the edge of the plastic. The screen inside was dark. My son sat beside me, hands folded, shoulders squared. He wore the same hoodie he always wore to court. Not because it was special, because it was familiar. The judge entered and went straight to business. We're here for testimony and resolution, she said. We will be efficient. My ex-husband's attorney stood first. He spoke carefully now, slower than before. His confidence had softened into something more deliberate. "My client maintains that he never intended to intimidate his child," he said. "Any statements made were misunderstood." The judge didn't respond. She gestured instead. "Call your witness." My ex-husband stood. He adjusted his jacket, then his tie. He avoided looking at my son as he took the oath. When he sat, he folded his hands exactly the way he always did when he wanted to look reasonable. "I love my child," he began. "I would never hurt him." My lawyer didn't object. She waited. He talked about stress, about divorce, about misunderstandings over tone, about how things sound worse when taken out of context. The judge listened without interrupting. Her pen stayed still. When it was my lawyer's turn, she didn't stand right away. She picked up a single document from her folder and walked toward the bench. "Your Honor," she said, "I'd like to mark this as Exhibit F." She handed it to the clerk, who passed it forward. The judge looked down. "What is this?" she asked. "An affidavit," my lawyer said, "submitted by the respondent." The judge flipped a page. Her eyes moved slowly, deliberately. My lawyer waited until she finished reading. "In this affidavit," she said, "the respondent states, quote, 'I have never threatened or intimidated my child.'" The judge looked up. "I see that." My lawyer nodded. "Now I'd like to reference the metadata confirmed recording marked as Exhibit B." She didn't press play. She didn't need to. She read instead. Calmly. Clearly. "If you tell your mom," she read, "you're going to make this a lot worse for yourself." The words landed harder spoken out loud than they ever had on the page. My ex-husband shifted in his seat. His hands separated. One of them slid under the table, gripping the edge. My lawyer continued. "This recording is time-stamped during the respondent's custody period. It is unedited, verified." She looked at him. "Can you explain how this statement is not intimidation?" My ex-husband opened his mouth. "I was trying to discipline him," he said finally. The judge tilted her head slightly. "By threatening consequences?" "No," he said quickly. "I meant—" My lawyer held up her hand. "Your Honor, I'd also like to reference the text message sent the same evening." She nodded to the clerk, who brought up the message on the screen. "Don't tell your mom. This is between us." The judge read it silently. Then again, she leaned back in her chair. "Mr. Harris," she said, using his last name for the first time. "Do you see the problem here?" He swallowed. "I was trying to keep things calm." The judge tapped her pen once. Tap. "You told your child to hide information from his other parent," she said. "You told him it would be bad for him if he didn't." She paused. "And then you denied all of it under oath." The room didn't move. Not a chair. Not a breath. My ex-husband's attorney stood. "Your Honor, if I may." She held up her hand. "No," she said. "You may not." She turned back to my ex-husband. "Do you wish to revise your testimony?" He looked at his attorney, then at the table, then, finally, at my son. For a moment, I thought he might speak to him directly. Instead, he looked away. "No," he said. The judge nodded once. She made a note. Her pen scratched hard across the page. She turned to my lawyer. "Anything further?" "Yes," my lawyer said. "We'd like the strongest recording admitted into the record." The judge considered this. She looked at my son. "You don't have to listen," she said to him. "You can step out." My son shook his head. "I want to stay." The judge nodded. She gestured to the clerk. "Play it." The room held its breath. The clerk pressed the button. The audio filled the courtroom. Clear, steady, unavoidable. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. When it ended, no one spoke. The judge looked down at her notes. Then up again. "Counsel," she said. "I have what I need." She stood. "I will issue my ruling after a short recess." The bailiff announced it. Chairs scraped back. The gallery exhaled. My son didn't move. He stared straight ahead. Across the aisle, my ex-husband sat frozen, hands flat on the table. For the first time since this started, he didn't reach for his phone. The recess ended without warning. No one came out to get us. No announcement echoed down the hall. The courtroom doors simply opened, and the bailiff nodded once. We filed back in quietly, like people returning to a room after something irreversible had already happened inside it. The judge was seated when we entered. She didn't shuffle papers. She didn't look at the file. Her hands rested flat on the bench, fingers spread, anchoring herself before she spoke. "This court does not take lightly the involvement of a child in proceedings like these," she said. Her voice was even, controlled. "But this court also does not ignore evidence simply because it is uncomfortable." She glanced at the clerk, then at my lawyer, then at my ex-husband. "Mr. Harris," she said, "you were given multiple opportunities to correct your testimony." "Well." My ex-husband sat very still. His shoulders were squared, his face set. He didn't nod. He didn't respond. "You chose not to," she continued. The judge picked up her pen. It hovered for a moment, then touched down. "The audio recordings submitted," she said, "are clear. They are time-stamped. They are corroborated by text messages and third-party documentation." She paused. "They directly contradict your sworn statements to this court." A quiet rustle moved through the gallery. Someone shifted in their seat. A chair leg scraped softly against the floor. My ex-husband's attorney stood. "Your Honor," she raised her hand. He stopped. "This is not a misunderstanding," the judge said. "This is a pattern." She turned her attention to my son. "Do you understand what this means?" she asked him. He nodded once. "Do you understand that none of this is your responsibility?" He hesitated, just a fraction of a second. "Yes," he said. The judge's gaze softened briefly. Then she looked back at my ex-husband. "You placed your child in a position where he felt the need to document his own safety," she said. "You instructed him to keep secrets, and then you denied all of it under oath." Her pen tapped once against the bench. "Tap. That is unacceptable." The words settled into the room. Final. Closed. The judge inhaled slowly. "This court finds that the respondent has engaged in intimidation of a minor," she said, "and that his testimony was not credible. If he was knowing..." My ex-husband's face changed then. Not dramatically, not explosively. The color drained from it. His mouth opened slightly, as if he might argue, or explain, or bargain. Nothing came out. The judge continued. "Effective immediately, primary physical custody will remain with the petitioner," she said, nodding in my direction. "The respondent's visitation will be suspended pending completion of a court-approved parenting and accountability program." "It's Devin Telp." My ex-husband's attorney dropped his gaze to the table. "Additionally," the judge said, "all communication between the respondent and the child will be supervised and documented." She paused. "And any violation of these terms will be addressed swiftly." Silence filled the room. Not shocked silence. Not triumphant silence. Just the quiet that follows a door closing. My son didn't react right away. He sat still, hands folded, eyes on the bench, processing. My ex-husband finally spoke. His voice cracked. "You're taking my child away from me." The judge looked at him steadily. "No," she said. "Your behavior did that." She made one final note, then set her pen down. "This matter is concluded." The bailiff announced the end of session. Chairs scraped back. The gallery stood. Conversations didn't start right away. People moved carefully, like they weren't sure what kind of noise was allowed yet. My ex-husband stayed seated. He stared straight ahead, hands gripping the edge of the table now, knuckles pale. His phone lay untouched beside him. My lawyer leaned in close to me. "It's done," she whispered. I didn't respond. I was watching my son. He stood slowly, shouldered his backpack, adjusted the straps until they sat right. As we turned to leave, my ex-husband finally looked at him. Their eyes met for a brief moment. My ex-husband opened his mouth. My son didn't wait to hear what he might say. He turned away and walked with me toward the aisle. Behind us, the courtroom stayed quiet. The sound that followed us out wasn't a voice. It was a chair scraping loudly against the floor. The courthouse doors closed behind us with a soft, dull sound that didn't match how final everything felt. Outside, the air was warmer than I expected. Late morning sun bounced off the parked cars, off windshields and hoods, forcing me to squint. My son stopped just past the steps and stood there, backpack still on, like he was waiting for something else to happen. Nothing did. People walked past us. A woman laughed into her phone. A man argued with a parking meter. Life moved the way it always had, indifferent to what had just shifted inside that building. My son exhaled slowly. It was the first time I'd heard him do that all morning. "Can we go home?" he asked. "Yes," I said. On the drive, neither of us spoke. The radio stayed off. The road noise filled the space comfortably now, not pressing. When we stopped at a light, he leaned his head against the window and watched a pigeon hop along the curb. At home, he dropped his backpack by the door. For the first time in weeks, he didn't keep it close. He kicked off his shoes and went straight to the kitchen. "What do you want for lunch?" I asked. He opened the fridge, stared inside, then shrugged. "Something normal." I smiled. "Just a little." While I made sandwiches, he sat at the table and drummed his fingers once, then stopped. The thin folder was still on the shelf above his desk, visible from where he sat. He noticed it too. "I don't need that anymore," he said. "Are you sure?" I asked. He nodded. "I know where it is." After lunch, he went to his room. I heard drawers open, then close, the soft scrape of a chair being moved. A few minutes later, he came back out holding the folder. He didn't shred it. He didn't throw it away. He slid it into the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet in the hallway, the one with old tax returns and appliance manuals. Then he closed the drawer. That evening, my phone buzzed. A message from my lawyer. "Order will be entered today. I'll send you the paperwork." I read it once, then set the phone down. Later, another message arrived, this one from an unfamiliar number. "Please tell him I love him." I stared at the screen. The kitchen light reflected back at me, pale and steady. I turned the phone face down on the counter and left it there. In the living room, my son sat on the floor assembling a model car he'd abandoned months ago. Tiny pieces spread out on the rug. He worked slowly, carefully, tongue pressed against his cheek in concentration. I sat on the couch and watched him, not closely, just enough. At bedtime, he paused at his doorway. "Is he going to be mad forever?" he asked. "I don't know," I said. "But that's not something you have to manage." He nodded. He stepped into his room, then stopped. "Thanks for listening," he said. "Always," I said. After he went to bed, I walked through the quiet house. I passed the hallway bathroom. The cabinet under the sink was empty. No charger, no green light. In my room, I opened the nightstand drawer where the tablet had once been hidden. It held nothing but a paperback and an old receipt. I closed it. At the front door, I checked the lock. Once. Out of habit. When I turned off the last light, the house settled around me. Not tense, not braced. Just quiet. The next morning, my son slept in.